Hello and welcome to Unfudge Your Marketing. This is a show where I chat with business owners and leaders about their past experiences with marketing that didn't go quite as planned. Most importantly, we focus on the lessons learned for you. I'm your host. I'm Kristi Mitchell. I'm a marketing strategist and consultant, and I work with service based business owners who have relied on referrals and word of mouth to build their business. And they know in order to have a bigger impact and to reach their bigger business goals, they need to finally think more strategically about their marketing. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Allen Falcon to the show. Allen is the CEO of Cumulus Global. He co founded the company with a mission to bring enterprise grade IT services to smaller businesses by leveraging cloud services. Today, the company helps small and mid sized businesses thrive and grow with productive, secure, and affordable managed cloud services. Welcome to the show, Allen.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for your willingness to come on. I always like to share with listeners how I know my guests. So we were just chatting about that before we came online. Allen is a past client of mine. However, I was like, I can't remember how we met, and he has a better memory than I do. So it was at a virtual networking event that I was a guest at. We got introduced, and yeah, the rest is history. That was a few years ago now.
It was. And I don't know if I would, we've used you in the past. I expect we'll use you again in the future as well. So
current client, we'll say.
current client.
Current ongoing client. Yes. It's been so fun to work with just as a side note, with you and your team too on the tech side of things, because it's not often that I work in the tech space. I have worked with some B2B software companies, but it's been a lot of fun just working with you and your team. And your bio that I read for you is, I think, very humble and short. You guys make an incredible difference for your clients, and you serve so many awesome segments, like very niche down. And I know that you're able to provide such a tailored service to the clients that you work with. So we'll probably get into more of that as the conversation unfolds, but I just wanted to give a little plug there. So today, when we talked about Allen coming on the show, he had mentioned there were kind of a couple iterations that his marketing plan or program has gone through in the time that he's been in business, which, by the way, Allen, how long have you been running your business?
19 years.
19 years, yes. So lots of iterations in that time, I'm sure, but there were kind of like two big ones that you said came to mind when we were talking about having you on the show. And so one of those was, you mentioned like consolidating a bunch of separate systems into one. And then the second thing was moving away from kind of a bunch of things going on to a consolidated strategy. So I actually see them as kind of both similar in a way. Where would you kind of like to kick off in terms of having this discussion about where your marketing was and kind of what helped you realize you needed to make some changes?
Well, I'd say prior to our first major transformation, we thought we were doing all the right things, right? We had a website. We had, a very robust opt-in list with a newsletter that went out monthly. We were doing periodic events online. This was back in the days when webinars were new and exciting. People wanted to go because it was novel to sit on a computer and learn something in that format. And we were doing other types of marketing and communications. We experimented with paid advertising that has never worked out well for us. So we can go into that if you want. But what we realized is, part of what happened is our main tool wasn't let us integrating, right? It was incredibly difficult. The tool we were using for email marketing and management had the forms management capability. Integrating that in the website was difficult given the limitations, and things weren't integrated. So we couldn't correlate, how many people who were inviting to a web event were actually going to the landing page from that invitation, and how many of those would then sign up. We couldn't know if we tested two subject lines, which subject line was getting better response rates. And so it became unwieldy to manage our contact lists that we were sending to. We had gotten a few complaints of people saying that opt out and we're still receiving things. We had people who actually emailed us saying, hey, I missed your newsletter. And we realized, they're off the list. We don't know why.
Oh, no.
And so we sort of took a step back and realized that of all the methods we were using to connect, We were actually running 5 different tools, none of which communicated with each other, and some of which we actually had to do weekly exports, right,
Yeah.
of data to move it to another tool,
Oof.
to use it there. And
Right.
so, really, heading into COVID, we knew our business was going to slow a little bit
Hmm.
because as a business owner, we all know there's never a good time to make a major internal change. And
Especially
so we
not a
figured,
technology one, right?
yeah, especially a technology one. And we had also been working on a new design and layout and strategy for our website. So during COVID, we decided to pull the plug and do it right away all at once.
Hmm.
And we literally consolidated 5 different marketing and sales support tools into the HubSpot platform. And at the same time, we launched the redesign of our website. And we really had to do those at the same time. With HubSpot, we could have a better ability to gather information from forms without having to have a unique, specific form for every single instance,
Yeah.
which we had with our old system. So our old website had over 200 forms on it throughout the website. It just evolved.
Wow.
So mass simplification of the website was necessary if we were going to move to a better marketing system for forms and data collection management.
Yeah.
And so we redesigned the website and launched the website and our use of HubSpot on the same Monday morning.
That is amazing. And I just want to take a step back for a second. Well, kind of take a little side note here. Really funny timing of our conversation because not too long ago, I released a solo podcast episode where I talked about the pandemic and how there are some things happening, especially in our country today that are impacting businesses. And I'm seeing like similar trends to what happened in the pandemic. And it presents this opportunity for business owners to, I think a lot of times what I see is there's this knee-jerk reaction like, oh, we got to cut marketing. And there's another opportunity, which it sounds like is an opportunity that you and your team took, is like, now is our time to like double down on our marketing and really take the time to streamline and make things work better for us so that we can come out the other side even stronger than before.
Oh,
So, yeah.
absolutely. And, given the length of the pandemic and the impact it had on businesses, it gave us an opportunity to leverage things, during the pandemic. The minute
Mhm.
we launched with HubSpot, we were able to easily create highly segmented lists of our existing customer base. And so we were able to continue to reach out to our existing client base with, cost savings ideas, reminding them, hey, if you're paying us annually for your service and cash flow's tight, talk to us. We can go to quarterly or monthly billing and help you out,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
All of these things, not, we weren't going to save their business by doing any of these things, but letting them know that, hey, we're thinking of you and
Yeah.
you're on our side. And,
Right.
I guess not surprisingly, we had people referred to us. And,
Yeah.
we'd people call up and say, hey, you know, Bob told me I should call you. You saved him, $600 a month on his IT costs when you didn't
Yeah.
have to. I can't get my IT guy to answer the phone. Can you get,
Right.
can you
Right.
help us? Right.
Yeah.
And so we gained, we gained business by being able to communicate and be very responsive to our existing clients, not just, out there marketing saying, here we are, here's why you should work with us,
Yes.
here are the problems we can solve.
Yes. I love that so much, Alan. And because of the extensive work we've done together, we know that we have a lot of these shared views on how we can leverage marketing as business owners to foster really long-term loyal relationships with clients. And I love that you bring up this example of, we looked at this as an opportunity to hone in on these nurture strategies that we have. And because you saw that these separate marketing systems that you were using started to have these limitations, were forward thinking and saying, we'd really like to have better visibility into the analytics. We'd really like to have better functionality and make sure that we're able to continue emailing people we should be emailing, and that people who don't want to hear from us aren't hearing from us. And so recognizing that kind of all these little things that weren't going as you wanted them to with your current separate systems, recognizing, okay, we need to move forward. We need to consolidate everything. This is going to be a huge undertaking. For anyone who knows kind of the situation that Allen's talking about, it's huge. Not only the separate systems, but relaunching an entirely new website as well. Like all of that at once is such a tremendous undertaking. So knowing what you know, especially about the tech side, you knew what you were getting yourself into. It wasn't any surprises from that standpoint, but really kind of, again, taking that proactive approach and knowing, yes, this is going to be a huge project and probably, have some significant costs associated with it. However, it's really going to enable us to move forward in a more productive, intentional way with our marketing efforts. Would you say that's accurate?
Oh, absolutely. It was very intentional. We knew it was a huge opportunity, and we had a very short time frame to do it. So from let's do this to launch was slightly less than 3 months, slightly less than 90 days.
Yeah.
And now we had been working on the website redesign for a while, but it meant, okay, we got to finish this up. We have to make decisions. It also meant as we were looking at how we're going to get all of our existing data about our marketing contacts and our clients into the new system and make sure it's clean. We made some hard decisions, right? We looked and said, okay, can we figure out who on our newsletter list hasn't opened the newsletter in 3 years? Okay, we're not moving them in, right? It's like, we make some, we'll export the list in case we need it, but we made some, decisions we might have otherwise, anguished over for months. And we just made them quickly. And it's like, sometimes a hot deadline and expediency actually helps you make better decisions. And we ended up with extremely clean data. And so it worked out. It worked out very, very well. And we also knew that the automation we were going to do around our marketing and sales processes didn't have to be perfect. And I would say for the first 3 months we were live, at least once a week, it was like, oh, we can add this little piece of automation here. Or if we change this, it'll take us less time. And so now things where it used to take us 6 to 7 hours to fully set up a web event. And with the graphics and the registration and the social media post scheduling and all of that, now it's less than 2 hours.
That's awesome.
So, huge savings, huge efficiency, very effective for us.
Yeah. So there's a couple lessons within that, Ellen, that I want to pull out for those listening. One, you were saying sometimes you just need to set that deadline, even though it's going to be difficult. And it sounds like maybe it might, really push you really hard, but having that deadline can really help get those things done that otherwise get pushed to the back burner. And then the other thing you said was, what was the other thing you just said about that? Oh gosh, it was right on the tip of my tongue.
About not worrying about everything being perfect.
Yes. That's exactly it.
You can definitely continue to refine and expand.
Yes. Right. Yeah. I've always loved that saying that perfection is the enemy of progress.
Yes.
So I think that those are two really key lessons for business owners who are listening to this show, is thinking in terms of how can I set really hard deadlines for myself to push myself to get this thing done that keeps getting, maybe deprioritized, put on the back burner, and don't let perfection get in the way of just getting something out there. Because usually something is better than nothing, unless it's going to hurt your brand, but that's got to be pretty bad. Right. And then you can take that time to kind of iterate and improve the process as you go, which sounds like you guys did.
And even with the website, we had 3 people review every page on the website. And of course we launch it, we blast, to our social media contacts. We've got the new website. And within like 7 minutes, someone's like, hate to tell you, on this, arcane page that's buried deep within your product info, there's a typo. And right then and there, we're like, okay, anyone finds a typo or an error on the website, we're going to send them a thank you note. We'll say, we had multiple people review it. Everyone missed it. You caught it. Thanks. And we're going to send them a $5 gift card for coffee.
Nice.
As a thank you gift. And then and then it became, we actually had someone post in their newsletter, saying, hey, look, I worked with this company in the past. They launched a new website. I noticed a typo. I pointed it out. They weren't mad at me. They didn't ignore me. They thanked me. They sent me a gift card.
I got a free cup of coffee out of the
I
deal.
love that, right? They get customer service, right? That was this whole thing. It's like they get relationship management. And suddenly, the phone rings, so.
Yeah.
1000%.
That is one of the reasons I have enjoyed working with you and your team so much over the years, is because you do really value those relationships, which I think just goes a long way, right? You got additional publicity out of something that you just felt was the right thing to do.
Yeah. And if you remember that anything you put out in public that's marketing, for us, we're looking at it, well, we're communicating with people who don't know who we are, right? But we're also communicating and hopefully engaging with people who do know who we are. And so it has to just not say, here's who we are. It has to reinforce the brand. And if our brand is a trusted advisor on technology matters for your business, on technology strategy for your business, as well as that implementation, then anything we engage with has to lead with customer service and client-centric and trust, and a message that we're also approachable, that we're not the stodgy know-it-alls. We're not going to talk down to you about technology. And so we have to make sure that all of our messaging comes into play.
Yes. Yeah. I love that.
Which gets into our second transformation.
Yes. That's what I was going to say. Good transition here to move into, which I'm really excited for this part of our conversation.
And so the impetus for our second transformation came from a recognition that two metrics that we tracked were in slow decline. One was the number of people registering for webcasts and attending, and then the second was for the number of people who eventually did business with us after registering or attending a webcast in one of our live events. And the reason I include both of those is we generate as much business from people who register and never attend or view the information as we do from people who do attend or do watch.
Interesting.
Because we realize that the act of registering is indicating an interest or a need in that topic. And so how we follow up if they don't join us is just as important as how we follow up with the people who do. In fact, in some respect, it's more important, because it's like, okay, we know that you have an interest or a need, but you didn't commit the time, and maybe it's because you're not that interested, or maybe it's because you're really busy, right?
Yeah.
And we don't know. So how can we approach these folks to say, hey, you registered, you didn't attend, if you have any questions, we're here. Here's a blog post or white paper that might be of interest to you. We can do this. If you're interested in this topic, we can do this assessment, let you know how you're doing on it, and take that opportunity. And so realizing those were in decline, we realize our messaging and our positioning might not be fresh. It might, even for our existing people who attend regularly, getting stale. And so I'll let everyone know that's when we engage with Kristi and stepped back and said, okay, what do we need? We need to relook at our ideal client profiles. What are 3 to 5? We picked 4 key pillars of messages we want and how we want to position ourselves. And what methods are we going to use for each pillar, for each client profile that we want? And then can we build a marketing calendar that manages our communications and engagement in a way that we're covering all of those combinations without overloading people with information and contact?
Yeah. So a couple things I want to pull out from that. This is so great. I think it's so helpful for people listening to the show. First of all, you recognize the data. You were paying attention to the data, which sometimes business owners are not doing, but you knew based on, these numbers for our webcasts are declining in terms of the people who are registering, and then the people who are attending, and the people who turn into clients. And so let's dig into this a little bit more. So kudos to you for looking at the data and making some decisions based on that. I think that's important. The other thing I want to go back to what you said, Allen, I really want to highlight this, is that you saw that it was just as important to have a strategic follow-up plan with the people who did not attend your events as it was for the people who did attend. And I wish I could do a poll right now to ask everybody listening to the show, how have you tailored your approach to those people who don't attend events that you host, register and don't attend? Because I think it's a very natural process for them to think, okay, the people who attended are the more serious, and so we're going to have this, strategic follow-up plan for them. But how many business owners are thinking of what is our strategic plan to address those people who don't come? So again, I just kind of want to bring that up for people listening to the show. I think that's a really great point that you bring up. And so since you looked at this and you realized there's an opportunity here, we need like to freshen up our content and make sure we're really talking to people in a way that's going to resonate. What did you kind of find through that? And whenever I have a client on this show, I'm like, let's not make it all about me. That's not the goal at all. But what did you kind of find through the process of getting more strategic with your marketing and kind of taking that step back to help you move forward?
Well, we realized that how we phrase things, how we present things needs to be different for our 4 different ideal client profiles. We realized that we may focus on things for a month or 2, that we need to rotate, whether it's, one of our pillars is leadership, one is security, one is, business results or business value, that we need to focus on those messages as well and reinforce each of them over time, and make sure we're not forgetting any of them. And also that, we need an appropriate cadence.
Yeah.
We were over posting on LinkedIn, which was working against us. I
have to say, you were my first client ever who had that problem.
Okay. Because we were basically saying, if we're putting it on X, it should go on LinkedIn at the same time. And well, no, because people use LinkedIn differently. And the follow mechanism is different. We realized that it wouldn't hurt us. In fact, it could help us to be on Instagram. So we thought we'd give it a try. That sort of forced us to change the way we used images across all social media, and came up with a system on it that's been very effective. We've gotten leads from Instagram, go figure. I had a client, say, "Hey, you're not on TikTok." I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? A data backup and recovery dance, interpretive dance? I don't know. I haven't figured out how we do that.
I want to be the first one to see it.
You will. It'll be scary. It'll be, rated. Don't look. Hide the children. So we do that. Now, it's interesting right now. One of the things we're exploring is ways we can track who visits landing pages, but doesn't submit the form. Because again, we know their interest, and, sort of the general, the gurus we follow are talking about how it used to be taboo to say, "Hey, we noticed you were on our website," because people would get creeped out. Now people expect it. It's most people, it's not going to creep out. So it's okay to say, "Hey, we noticed you were looking at this on our website. We're following up to see if you have any questions, or can we set a time to talk about your interest and see if we can provide you with helpful information?" And so we're figuring out how mechanically we want to do that within our systems, and how we want to message it in a way that it's not creepy. It comes off as helpful.
Right. Yes, which is so aligned, like we said, to the brand that you've built and continue to build. So this has been awesome, Allen. So many great little tidbits. I think, some of the big lessons I'm taking away from this conversation we've had are systems are really key. And when you kind of recognize that things might be falling through the cracks or not working as efficiently, taking a look at the marketing systems for your business can really be hugely instrumental in helping you to grow your marketing and have a bigger impact and be able to measure it better. And then the second piece is the strategy, right? And kind of when you're paying attention to the data and recognizing things are trending not in the direction we want them to, how do we kind of take that step back and assess our overall strategy moving forward, which then feeds into all these things you said, like your content and the platforms you're showing up on. How are you showing up on? How are you following up with people? What data are you continuing to track over time? There's definitely a lot that we have covered in this conversation. But as we get ready to kind of wrap up here, because this time has flown by, are there any kind of key lessons learned that maybe we didn't touch on, or you just kind of want to hone in on again for those listening?
Yeah, I'd say one of the things that came out in this process is we found our voice, right? And so, and we can define it, right? We're first person, active tense whenever possible, and familiar, right? So we use I and we and our team and your team and you and your business and really try to make it a personal connection. The second thing we learned is we have to have fun.
Yeah.
Right. And we actually found that by making I guess it might not be the right word, by making subject line and emails more entertaining and less, formal business and more fun, that will actually have higher opens and clicks and engagement.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right. And so it's like, communicate with people the way you like to communicate with people and have them communicate with you. And they'll respond, because it'll be not just about what you offer. It'll be the emotional response about who you are and how you present yourself in your business.
I absolutely love that. So for me, from what you're saying, my big takeaway is authenticity, which I talk a lot about.
I knew you were going to say that.
You're not going to use the word, but I'm going to put the word to it. I know some people think it's cliche. I'm still all about it. But yeah, it is, you're walking the walk. You're doing what you say. You are building that trust. You are authentically yourselves in the content that you're putting out there. You address people's concerns and thank them for pointing out typos on your website with a free cup of coffee. Like, you're doing all the things. I absolutely love it. It's been so fun to watch your marketing evolve over the years. So, Allen, thank you so much for your willingness again to come on the show and share all of these marketing lessons learned.
My pleasure.
How can listeners learn more about you and what the Cumulus Global team is up to and what you offer?
The best thing to do is hit our website, cumulusglobal.com. Cumulus like the cloud. It's what we do. Global, that's where we do it. .com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allen, again. And
thank you.
I'll be seeing everybody next time. Take care.